Imagine taking a step outside. Take a breath and start coughing because that air you just inhaled was full of pollutants. This is a reality for many people in the US who have to deal with something like this running less than 5 miles away from where they live every single day. This is such a big issue that in 2022, a Senate bill was passed in California identifying these types of disadvantaged populations to target for climate investment. Many of these areas are located along rail lines and not freeways or roads, because while cars and trucks have been rapidly adopting zero emissions technology, trains have not. The fundamental problem here is a lack of developed technology and high short-term costs associated with implementation. So how do we solve this? Well, first, we need to understand what zero emissions means for these disadvantaged populations, to understand why these benefits are worth the high economic costs. And so my research proposed a methodology to address those 2 points. So the city of Barstow, California in the Mojave Desert was chosen since it was home to one of the largest rail yards in the western United States and had communities that were heavily burdened by rail emissions. So how do we calculate rail emissions in Barstow? Well, first off, a camera on site would capture footage of passing trains, and a classification model would identify each rail car on that train. On the right here are a couple examples of different types of rail cars. And so from this data, we can obtain the weight of the entire train, which is directly related to emissions. While the rail cars themselves do not produce any measurable emissions, they do contribute to the total weight of the train, which causes the emissions produced by these locomotives to increase overall. And so from the data that we collected, a total of 70 trains and 6,800 rail cars passed through Barstow during the period, producing a total of 2,230 pounds of NOx and 50 to 80 pounds of PM2.5. PM2.5 refers to particulate matter that is less than 2.5 micrometers, which is very easily inhaled and can cause a variety of health risks. There's actually a number for that. Social costs, $42,000 in social costs from these emissions. $42,000 impacted the disadvantaged populations in Barstow from 1 day of emissions. These emissions also equate to roughly 32,000 heavy-duty trucks of NOx and 59,000 heavy-duty trucks of PM2.5. That's a lot. These numbers heavily favor trucks because they have a lot stricter emission standards and more zero emissions technology on the road compared to trains. Despite these emissions, trains are still much more efficient at shipping freight over long distances, while also not causing congestion on the roads. This is why making rail environmentally viable is so important, not only to bolster America's freight network, which is something that we're really good at, by the way, but also to reduce the impact on these disadvantaged populations. A lot of us reap the benefits of rail freight, and yet we still have clean air to breathe, and we often take that for granted. Understanding rail emissions allows us to see the other side of things, the side of people who have to live with smoky air and constant noise pollution in their lives. And it allows us to understand why reducing rail emissions is just so important. Thank you.